Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another DeFIRE AMA. It is July the 9th, and we are talking today about delta neutral strategies in the Blaze marketplace. And we were going to start with a couple of other updates as well. Um, we are in the middle of our sort of summer schedule, so Firefly is taking a much deserved trip uh, and doing some work on the road. So we didn't have his weekly update this week. So for the next couple of weeks, I'll be providing all the updates on what's going on behind the scenes. Uh, we want to say a special thank you to Supreme Bit, who is going to be taking a step back from doing the weekly update bulletins. He's been a really solid contributor, and this is hopefully going to be just a short hiatus for him. Life has gotten kind of busy, so he let us know that he's going to be out for a bit. We'll probably bring somebody else in to help us with those. We luckily got a lot of great writers that are able to step in for us, so I'm sure we'll keep providing written content as well on our updates every week. Let's see. So let's get into what we've been working on this week. So we continue to work with our development team, including the 10 Clouds guys who are helping us on the back end right now. We did discuss this week also bringing in some more support on the front end. So far, we have Pro Harvester and Picunia that have been helping us with front end work. They're kind of focused on getting a sale code finished up for us because we want to get the next round of sales going as quickly as possible. And that is basically the back end of it is written, the front end is like partially there. And so we're just trying to get the rest of the way there. We'll let you guys know. When we are scheduling and the dates and all that kind of stuff. Um, we continue to work on partnerships. This week, Firefly did a presentation for a grant from a foundation. We have some more of those in a pipeline. We've been talking with other people who are interested in investing on a larger level. So, in addition to having the sale round, we'll be looking at bringing in some more long-term focused investors that might be making a more substantial investment. So that's like more of a long-term thing, but we've got the ball rolling right now on that. Um, Anything that's pertinent to the community, we'll definitely let you know if there's any updates on that and keep you in the loop as far as any new community members. Let's see. So as far as back end work, we are working on optimizing our swaps for our containers. So this is kind of getting into the weeds about how we are developing the tech. But anytime you come in and out of a container, we're trying to make everything as low touch as possible. Obviously, we've talked in the past about allowing people to just buy in with USDC or another stable coin and not have to worry about learning how to swap and bridge and all those kinds of things if they're new to DeFi. So we're really focusing on making sure that we deliver that aspect of the scope of the DApp. So we've been kind of working through scenarios with the engineer team to see what's the most efficient way to swap in and out of zaps. Because anytime you swap, you're going to have some price uh, there's going to be some effect on the price, in the way of fees, slippage, and all that kind of stuff. So we have identified a strategy we think is going to be novel that hasn't really been used by um, other protocols that are trying to help people um, farm yield. And so, generally speaking, when you're swapping in and out of just a farming pool, that's a fairly straightforward zap, right? But when you're dealing with a multi-step strategy, then things will become a little bit more complicated. There's a lot more to track in terms of different APRs coming from different tokens, and then like maybe downstream there's another little bit of incentive for another token that you're compounding into, and then you have to track all of that back to the overall share token and make sure that that's giving an accurate assessment of the price and the interest on the share. So there's a lot that goes on there. But the first step is just to swap into whatever the liquidity pair is that is the starting point for the strategy. And depending on uh, depending on what decks you use, it's going to affect slippage, especially on if you're trying to uh, uh, focus in on a token that has maybe a lot of hype around it, but maybe not a lot of actual depth of liquidity. So if you actually build a container that's got a really attractive APR, one of the things you got to think about ahead of time is, okay, well, if this really gains a lot of TVL and there's not that much liquidity on chain, how do we make sure that we get the best price and keep people from, especially if you're buying them with USDC, then you don't actually know ahead of time what the price impact might be unless something gets pre- uh, some sort of a preview, right? So, in when you're dealing with swaps where you don't want to be swapping, in really small denominations uh, every time somebody wants to come into a container, if they're not going to be making a sizable deposit, because then you may get more. Um, there may be more price impact, right? And so that's um, I mean, if it's just the individual user deciding that on their own, that's one thing. But if you're depositing USDC in, and then we want to get the best price, then we may want to do a batch transaction where we're trading into that token after a certain number or a certain amount of deposit has come into the liquidity, like on its way en route to the strategy. So certain DEX aggregators are compatible with smart contracts to get in and out of a strategy position, but you got to make sure that the security is really high. And so there's some due diligence to do there. So we've been working really hard with 10 Clouds to make sure that we um, try to do something that's fairly new and novel, and will definitely like pass on some savings on swaps to our users, but it's going to be a little bit tricky um, to deliver on in the short term. Just got to make sure that we um, figure out exactly how to um, structure everything with the security in mind, which we're totally confident we can do. The other thing is just like wanting to be able to zap in and out of positions, but also be able to give experienced investors the opportunity to use more of a pro kind of interface to be able to go directly into the container, whatever the target assets are, so that they can, if they already have some, they don't have to swap into it with USDC. They can use what they already have, or if they want to go and swap into it, and they have a preferred DEX, then they can do that. So trying to create both low friction for new users while also not causing any sort of penalties to people who have the DeFi experience. So totally doable. I think it's going to be really cool to be able to say that we've achieved that, because it's not actually as easy as it sounds, and that's probably one of the reasons that there are other people who have already tried to do this. But we're going to do it, and I think it's going to be a pretty big achievement. Um, so that was one aspect of some of the meetings this week. The other thing is that I've been working on delta neutral strategies with the team. I have identified several of the protocols on Polygon that I think will be good partners for us, and some of them are the lending and borrowing protocols. And anytime you want to do a delta neutral strategy, you're going to need to borrow against the asset uh, that you're looking to accumulate. So provide some sort of leverage, and then borrow into whatever the target asset is on the short side. So if you're shorting the token because you think price might go down, then you're borrowing that target asset and then you're selling out of it. So you're locking in the price of that token. So I've actually drawn up on our screen here a delta neutral strategy for Aave. Aave's big, one of the biggest protocols on the Polygon network. They're also just generally one of the biggest protocols on any network, including one of the biggest ones on Ethereum. So for any of the main layer one blockchains that we might be on in the future, they're going to have a presence, so it makes sense to work with them. So in this situation, you can see it says that 40% of the total value locked in the container goes to the long side of the strategy. So if you're long on the token, that means that you think that the price is going to appreciate over time. And then if you're short on the token, that means that you think the price is going to go down in the short term, and that you think uh, you're going to have a better opportunity to make money selling out of the token position and buying back in when the price bottoms out, right? So that's why it's delta. So the delta is the overall market movement. Um, so um, you're not on the alpha side or the beta side. You're not on the up or the down side. You're tracking with the average market movement. So you're on the delta. So the reason that it says 40% to the long and 60% to the short is that if you want to be actually 50-50 on both strategies, then you actually have to think about collateral on the short side, right? So in order to actually have a similar amount of value in on the token on the short side, you have to remember that we're leveraging, at least in this strategy, we're leveraging USDC. So you would deposit USDC into the lending side of Aave's market, and then you would borrow against it. But there's a max leverage on any particular token. So if you're going to be trying to leverage a token and then sell out of it and wait for it to drop, you're also going to have to manage your leverage to borrow rate um, as the market fluctuates. So you don't want to leverage as the max amount that you can, and so you're going to want to put in more of your overall value in that token on the short side, so that then when you leverage, that you're closer to 50%. So uh, say I short Aave with 60% of my USDC, and then I'm gonna do like a 60% uh, borrow rate, right? So 60% of the value of my USDC on that side. Um, so then 60% of 60% is going to be, overall 40% of the total value that I'm putting into this overall strategy. So 40% long, 40% short on the Aave token means I'm going to be basically 50-50, so delta neutral. So then the cool thing about this particular kind of delta neutral strategy is that we've actually got options on Polygon to then take that either on the long side or short side, take that USDC that we have accumulated by selling our Aave tokens and then stake that in an additional protocol to gain additional yield while we're waiting for the market to either rise or drop, right? So if I'm borrowing against USC to get Aave, I sell out of the Aave, then I can actually stake USDC. And in this situation, we're thinking of partnering with 100 Finance, which has recently um, launched on Polygon. And so I think it's a great opportunity. They have a presence in a lot of the major DeFi blockchains. They offer great rates for lending of stable coins. And I think that their governance token is a very well designed token. It's got great tokenomics. I think it's going to be something that will be good for people to look at, as something that may continue to grow and appreciate in value over time. Certainly, they have as good a chance as many of the other lending protocols of making gains in the next bull market. So we think it's a great place to put our USDC and get a little bit of extra return on interest while we're waiting to see whether we're going to, if you're depositing into this container, you may be waiting to see if the market's going to drop. You may be waiting for the market to come back up. It doesn't really matter, but either way, with this particular setup, you're going to be gaining tokens over the long run on either side of it. So the one reason that people sometimes don't look to delta neutral strategies when there's like a crab or a bear or a bull market is because you do take a little bit of a hit on the overall APR that you could get. Well, not always, but um, if you can find a better APR in a just a pure farming liquidity pool somewhere else, right? So, and the reason for that would be because when you're leveraging on the short side, you're not leveraging 100% of your of that USDC. You know, you have to leave some room because Aave doesn't allow you to do completely 100% collateralized leverage. So if you're only going to get like 60% leverage on that on those USDC, that means that there's some outstanding value there that's not gaining interest over that time. So you know it's still on the whole, it's a better situation when you don't know which way the market's going to go. If you leave that asset in a just a liquidity farm, then if the price goes down, it doesn't matter how high the APR is, your overall value is going to go down. So at least with the delta neutral strategy, you have a good chance of not only retaining the amount of value you had when you started farming the token, but you also will be gaining interest on either side of the long or the short side of the strategy, which means you're going to end up with more tokens. And then, even if that, you have less, even if the tokens are worth less, it's still going to be like either an equal or greater amount of value for the number of tokens that you then withdraw from the strategy. So I know that's kind of a lot to think about and wrap your head around, especially when I'm kind of not giving a super succinct description, but it's definitely a very powerful risk adjusted strategy for a bear market or when you're just crabbing and not on a downside. So then on the long side of the strategy, you can see that you would stake your Aave into the Aave market. And then a cool thing that's available through My Finance on Polygon is the ability to stake your Aave receipts in their yield uh, vaults, and then that creates a receipt token called Aave Market or compounding Aave Market Aave. So My Finance actually takes your Aave, and as it's gaining yield, it auto compounds that interest back into the Aave for you, so you don't have to worry about auto compounding your interest that's growing in the Aave market. And then if you then take that compounding Aave market Aave and stake it in a lending vault through My Finance, that means that your collateral is actually growing slightly against whatever it is that you borrow, which in My Finance you borrow their mimetic stable coin against whatever your collateral is. So the borrow side value is not going to go up or down. Mimetic, even if it has a little bit of a shift off peg, it's got a ton of liquidity. They're doing a lot of work right now with their collateralization, just like any stable coin is after what happened with the Terra Luna ecosystem. So, my is like very highly liquid on Polygon. You can find crazy APRs on it because it's, always in demand for lending and borrowing. Um, so even if it's not your favorite stablecoin in a strategy, it's a great thing to be gaining yield off of. So then, if we put compounding Aave Market Aave in a lending vault through My Finance, and then we leverage for uh, a reasonable, a risk adjusted amount of mimetic stablecoin, and then we put that stablecoin into a vault strategy which we are developing, where we will be gaining yield off of lending that MI out to different lending institutions on not institutions but different lending protocols on Polygon. Um, you can get a much higher return that way off of single staking than you can like through a liquidity farming pool. And it's possible we may do a mix of some farming and some single staking in vault and lending vaults. But either way, you should get a really good return off of that Matic while you're waiting and letting it appreciate. And then that that yield can be going back to just stabilizing the leverage to borrow ratio as um, you're allowing your position to mature. So the leveraging side is always staying in balance. Your overall value is increasing, and even if the token value overall goes down, you're still going to end up in a better position than you would if you were just letting it sit in your wallet, or if you were just putting it in a farming pool. So it's a great strategy, a very powerful strategy for a bear market, and so we think it's a great thing to work on. So it's not just this one that we're looking at. We have multiple different assets that we think would be good for this. One of the things that I think is really great about using the delta neutral strategy is that for tokens that don't have a lot of incentivization, because they're coming from a more established protocol with less token emissions at the stage that they're at, you can actually, with this particular strategy, you can get a higher return than you would just trying to farm it out on its own a lot of the time, especially if you want to do it as a single staking yield where you're not going to have a permanent loss. So for something like ETH, for instance, you want to have some ability to gain interest on your ETH, but you don't want to deposit it somewhere in a lending vault where you might be getting like 0.5%, or like a really, really low return on it. You want to try and find something that's like a decent return on it. And you can go into any market maker and stake ETH against a different token, like USDC or some other more volatile token. You can find some way of farming it for a higher yield. But generally speaking, then you're going to be, in the short term, you're going to be subject to price fluctuation. You may have impermanent loss. So that is not as sure of a bet as putting in a single staking vault. And so you have to choose, you know, unless you have something like a delta neutral strategy where you have a guaranteed return on interest, you're going to have to choose either a higher yield or a safer, lower risk position. But this allows you to have like kind of the best of both worlds of a higher return on interest than you would be able to find in most other situations, but with a higher risk adjusted return. So the risk is in balance with the reward. So I think it's going to be something that's going to be great for things like uh, ETH, Balancer Curve, Aave, uh, any protocol that's established that the token has good governance structure, and is worth holding long term, but is not necessarily going to give you good short term returns. So if you're trying to hold it long and you want to be able to um, make your capital more liquid and get more out of it, then this is a great opportunity. So we'll definitely have several of these strategies. We're only going to start out with less than two handfuls probably of strategies for the MVP, but after that we'll be quickly ramping up into more, and so we'll actually have a lot of strategies already kind of waiting in the wings, and it'll just be a matter of how quickly we can build the smart contracts and bring them online after that. So um, yeah, a lot going on. Lots of strategies that are basically now ready. From a architecture standpoint, it's just a matter of executing. So one of the things that's tricky about implementing a strategy like this is that if you're going to be offering multiple different pathways to APR by creating a vault where maybe you're six different pools that you're kind of splitting the capital off into with different APRs, and then you need to track that back to one single APR. There's APRs for different aspects of the yield on the long side of the position, and there's different APRs for the tokens on the short side of the position. So you might be getting a little bit of interest out of the Aave, the cream position. Then you might be getting a little, you'll definitely be getting interest out of the 100 finance position. You get a little bit of interest on the long side of the Aave market position, and some interest out of the my finance position, and then also out of the DeFIRE position. So you have to then aggregate all of those, and remember that especially for the lending vaults, they're all dynamic. So from moment to moment, the APRs will change by the block. Um, to figure out how to track all of that in real time and be constantly providing a accurate APR is a huge challenge. And that's why a lot of times there'll be kind of like a moving average APR rather than a real-time APR for certain kinds of vaults. So that may be the solution. We're still working it out. Yeah, so that has been kind of like one of the big things for this week. Also, still working on some of the strategies that are already, there's smart contracts in the works for some of the um, strategies that utilize a stop loss trigger. Um, and so, multiple different irons in the fire. Um, yeah. Um, let's see, what else are we talking about? Oh, we're working on an article to put out on the blog for the Shimmer network, which is the blockchain for the IOTA foundation. It's going to be a new DeFi focused blockchain. So we've been getting to know everyone in the Shimmer network. Different protocols are going to be there. All of the foundation folks there trying to be involved because they're going to provide us with support. We're going to try and make more connections there. It'll be a great opportunity to grow the protocol in addition to providing lots of exposure to all of our favorite assets and protocols on Polygon, Avalanche, Phantom, etc. So um, yeah, we should have a blog post out in a couple of weeks. So we'll be getting some people coming in to the server through that and through some different AMA appearances in different Discord servers across the Shimmer network. Um, and yeah, so there's other things happening on the writing front as well. It's really been kind of a graphic design, engineering, business development mode in the last couple of weeks. But we will get back to doing more writing and producing more content as well. So it's just a matter of time until we get back in that mode. Um, yeah, so feeling good about the production and about the momentum right now. Everyone's working really hard, and I think we're going to have some pretty exciting results from all that hard work soon. In the meantime, thanks everybody for the support and for hanging tight as we go through this building process. Hope that this gives you some reason to feel excited as we do about moving into the end of the summer and launching and moving on to the next steps. In the meantime, hope everyone's having a great summer. Thanks for checking in, and we will catch you next week.